Hey everyone, welcome to Does It Hold Up Box Office Edition. I'm Adam, and here on the channel every single Tuesday, we go over what were the top 10 movies at the box office this past weekend. We also check in with how 2024 is standing up against 2023 and a couple other good things. Thank you for joining me, and I'm excited to go over this week's numbers. Let's go ahead and start with the top 10 movies like we usually do. In first place, no surprise here, was Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. In its first weekend in theaters, it did debut with $58.4 million, which was higher than the expected number. It was only supposed to open somewhere between maybe 52 to 55, so opening up at 58 million means more people were going to see it, which is a good sign for the box office overall. But it got me thinking. This is a really good debut for an Apes movie, for a Planet of the Apes movie, but is it the best opening weekend for any of the Planet of the Apes movies? So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a new chart here, special chart just for this week, of the top 5 openings for any movie labeled as a Planet of the Apes movie. The only ones that you're not going to see on this list, because they just, came out forever and a day ago, is all the old Charlton Heston movies, because they would open up to like 9 million. Yes, adjusted for inflation, they might be somewhere in this list, but we're not going to adjust for inflation because some of the numbers from back when those movies came out can't always be trusted. And some weren't even documenting opening weekend, so there's not an actual number there. So we're just going to start with 2001's Planet of the Apes by Tim Burton, and then all these new Planet of the Apes movies. How did they fall in line? So let's look at those top openings. In first place is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes from 2014, which was the second movie in this new franchise. It opened up to a very impressive $72.6 million. In second place is the 2001 Planet of the Apes, directed by Tim Burton, starring Mark Wahlberg in what is basically a terrible role for him. But all the way back in 2001, that one opened up to $68.5 million. Now, it helps that M. Night Shyamalan was riding high off of, Sleepy Hollow and The Sixth Sense and a couple other movies, so people were very interested in this one, and it clearly shows. In third place is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes that just came out this past weekend with that $58.4 million. In fourth place is the third movie in this franchise, War for the Planet of the Apes from 2017 with $56.2 million. And the lowest opening out of this new franchise is Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the first one, all the way back in 2011. Can't believe it's been 13 years of ape movies. Incredible. And the CGI looks just as good today as it did 13 years ago, which is very impressive. But Rise, the very first one, opened up to $54.8 million. If you look at those numbers across the board, those are just really good openings for these Planet of the Apes movies. No wonder they keep making them, because they open really strong. People are really impressed with this franchise and what they're going to see, because they're compelling stories with some great visuals and usually some wonderful performances as well. And it tends to focus a lot on the apes, because that's what we're here for. Unlike some other franchises, one in particular that's in fifth place, we're going to talk about in a second, they don't focus on the creatures, they focus on the people. We're not here for that. Give us the apes. And they do. All right, let's go back to the top 10. In second place is The Fall Guy in its second weekend with $13.7 million. A pretty big drop, but also not as big as I was expecting, of 51%. It's made $49.7 at the domestic box office so far. That's actually pretty good because it opened lower than expected, but I think it held better than expected. In third place is Challengers in its third week, not moving out of that spot, with another $4.3 million, a 42% drop. 37.7 is what it's brought in so far. In fourth place in its second weekend, staying right there in fourth place, is Tarot with another $3.4 million. Only a 48% drop. That's actually really strong for a horror movie. We normally see them drop significantly in that second week because the first week is when all the horror fans go see it. So to hold that well must say something for this movie, but it's a little weird because I don't think a lot of people are either, one, talking about this movie, or two, have many good things to say about it. This is on my list of something to watch, but I don't know if I'm going to go to theaters to check it out. but it has brought in just under 12 million so far. In fifth place is the movie I was talking about earlier, Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, in its seventh week with another 2.6 million, 42% drop, but it is just under 192 million at the domestic box office. Can it get to 200 million? Well, stick around week to week and we'll find out. But it is a movie that I mentioned earlier because unlike the Planet of the Apes movies, Godzilla Kong, until this most recent movie, which is showing that's why it's making so much money, they like to focus on the humans. And at the end of the day, that's not what we're here for. Give us the apes fighting things. That's all we want. In sixth place is Unsung Hero with 2.5 million in its third week. Only a 15% drop. This movie's holding pretty well, and it's made just over 17 million. In its 10th week, Kung Fu Panda actually moves up from the 8th spot to the 7th spot with 1.8 million, only a 27% drop, and it's just over 191 million. Civil War comes in 8th place in its 5th week with another 1.804 million, a 49% drop, 65.2 million here domestically for that movie already. And in 9th place is Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace in its second weekend of re-release. Guys, there's other good movies at the theater. This is a movie you've seen a million times. Why is it still here? I understood last weekend it, was Star Wars weekend. I'm a little confused why it's still in the top 10 this second weekend. I understand Star Wars might be the biggest franchise of all time, but doesn't make a lot of sense. It did bring in 1.4 million, an 84% drop from the over 8 million it took in last weekend, but who cares because it's made a ton of money since its initial release. Rounding out the top 10 this week is Abigail in its 4th week with 1.1 million, a 51% drop, 24.8 million for that movie. And I think it's got maybe one more week here, not 100% sure. Out of the top 10, just one movie to make way for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and that movie was Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire, but it had a very impressive run, so applause to that movie, especially because it wasn't very good. So, take what you can get. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 2023 versus 2024 weekend to weekend chart, and this is where we compare how did the weekend this year compare to last year, the same weekend. We're currently in the 19th weekend of the year, and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes led the way. And it led the way to a pretty solid 95.6 million total box office here domestically, which was just shy of matching 2023's 19th weekend, where Guardians of the Galaxy was the number one movie for the second weekend, and it only took in, it led the way for 100.8 million. So we fell about 5.3 million short, which is really good because you're comparing a Marvel movie to a Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That's really strong. So this was a very strong weekend for 2024. I'm actually rather impressed with it. And because we're in, summer movie season, I expect these weekends to only get bigger from here. So it's going to be a tight race throughout this until obviously we get to, the Barbenheimer thing from last year, where I don't think anything we do this year is really going to compete with that. Let's just be honest here. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the genre distribution. How much money have we made at the box office total so far in 2024, and which genres are leading the way? So right now, the total gross for 2024 at the box office is about $2.25 billion. And action is far and away leading all genres. It makes up 41.6% of that total. That's super impressive. Tons of action movies. Some movies that you can qualify as a couple different things, but action is usually the main focus, and that's not going to change anytime soon. In second place is comedy, then drama. In fact, this entire chart, nothing's changed. It's all in the same exact order. The only difference is what percentage is, but nothing changed really that much. So you can see action's going to lead the way for a while. And I don't know anything coming out this summer that's really going to change that. The only time I think this chart's really going to change much is when we get towards the end of the year, when we get into Oscar season, and we're going to see a lot of dramas and stuff start coming in. and that's where I think we're going to see a giant swing. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the top 10 movies of 2024. These are the movies that it doesn't matter if you came out in 2023, doesn't matter if you came out in 2024, it's only the money that you've made in this calendar year. Couple little changes here. In first place is still Dune Part 2 with that $282 million. I don't think any movies that are currently in theaters are going to reach that number, so it might be number one for quite a while. Second and third place did switch, just as I mentioned they probably would last week. Godzilla Kong is now number 2 with $191.9 million. Kung Fu Panda 4 dropped down to 3 with $191 million. About $900,000 separate them, but Godzilla x Kong is still doing better week to week in theaters, so it's probably gonna expand that gap quite a bit here over the coming weeks. In fourth place is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, followed by Bob Marley One Love in fifth. Wonka is still in sixth place, but it won't hang around all year, so don't get comfortable with it being there. In seventh place is Migration. Mean Girls is in eighth, Beekeeper in ninth, and we do have a new movie making its way onto the charts this week. Just as I said last week, Civil War is going to jump into that 10th spot here, and it did with $65.2 million, knocking out Anyone But You. Okay, for the last couple of weeks we've been doing this, and I think it's a lot of fun. I don't know, let me know in the comments below if you think this is fun, if you think it's worth doing week to week, if you enjoy it, if there's a movie you want me to take a look at. But we do a flashback here. Not just a flashback to, hey, what movies came out on what weekend, and did they do well, or did they... I wanted to break down numbers just a little bit more. So what I did was looked at a specific movie and decided if it was profitable during its theatrical run. This doesn't include home video, toy tie-ins, video games, anything like that. It's just specifically its theatrical run. So this week I took a look at 2001's Planet of the Apes, directed by Tim Burton. We all know this isn't a good movie. It might be fun to watch because of how incredibly bad it is, but it's not a good movie. But did it make money while it was in theaters? Well, let's go ahead and find out. So if you take a look at the breakdown here, domestically, week 1, it brought in $96.2 million. Studios kept 60% of that, which is about $57.7 million. Week 2, the studio made about $21 million. Week 3 plus, studios domestically got to keep $22.3 million. Internationally, the movie did really well with $182 million. So the studio, with that 40%, grossed $72.8 million. Really good for them overseas. I couldn't find a theatrical release for this movie in China, so I'm going to mark those numbers as NA because I couldn't find any. Budget for this movie was about $100 million. Marketing. Here's where it always gets tricky. It's hard to lock in marketing numbers. I did give this one $75 million for marketing, which I think might be a little low compared to a lot of other movies that came out around the same time with a similar budget. But this movie did something interesting with geocaching where they were like, hey, we're going to let people market our movie more than we're going to market our movie. So I ended up only giving it a $75 million marketing budget. Gross, it took in $362.2 million worldwide, but its net was only $174.4 million. So if I was correct with the marketing and the budget of $175, you can see that theatrically, this movie lost just $533,000. That's not bad. Especially if the marketing budget was a little bit lower, it's going to automatically be profitable in theaters. So it shows that it's not just good movies that can be profitable. Sometimes really bad movies can also make a lot of money in theaters. All right, thanks for joining me on the show this week to see if the box office held up. I'll be back again on Tuesday doing the same thing I do every week where I break down the charts about the weekend's box office. There's a lot of other good stuff on this channel as well, new movie reviews. We also release daily fun facts in our short section, so make sure you check those out as well. Until I see you next time, just remember, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and as always, keep watching movies.